So, in conclusion, in summary, I think there really are two different models for project management that are being proposed. And I think the classic PMI model, the PMBOK model, is much more of a push model, if you will, a prescriptive model. We need this type of model in a number of cases where we need to plan everything in detail up front. We can't afford any mistakes. We've got to get it right the first time, or we're in a fixed price contract or with very tight constraints that cannot change. So we know what our requirements must be in detail. So we're going to plan everything out in a very fine-grained project management plan, and we're going to use these formal processes as defined in the PMBOK guide and go execute against that. So this is a more prescriptive model, a more of a push model. And for Agile, we'll use it where we don't know what we want up front, or we know that the requirements will be changing very quickly. There will be a lot of volatility with these requirements, and we need to discover them, explore them. So don't try to define everything in detail up front. Allow the team to pull these requirements as they go through the project in the different iterations. Empower the team, provide them a lot of freedom and trust, let them plan in each sprint, in each iteration, exactly what they need to do. So they'll figure out what elements of the plan need to be concluded in a particular sprint and to what level of detail to go to. So this is much more of a pull model or a just-in-time model. They will pull the right level of planning to the right detail and the right supporting documentation as they see fit in each sprint. So this is going to work much, much better again in projects where the requirements are unknown up front or there's going to be a lot of volatility. So it'll be real interesting to see what types of changes PMI is planning to make in the next version of the PMBOK guide to accommodate Agile and the different Agile methodologies. So the word is that they're going to release the draft version for version 5 of the PMBOK guide and release that, put that on their website, pmi.org, this month on February 17th. And then they'll wait the rest of the year to get feedback from project managers and PMPs, so our requested changes and updates and things that we would like added. And they'll assimilate all that information, and the word is then that version 5 will be formally released at the end of the year on December 31st. 2012. And in this next version, they are planning to address Agile to some extent. In version 4, the current version, there is no mention of Agile at all. So version 5 is going to address it, but they're going to stay, the plan is right now, they're going to stay at a very high level and not dig into any depth. So that's what we're hearing. So of course, given everything that I've been saying in this presentation, I would vote for PMI making more structural changes to the PMBOK guide, more substantive changes that really did accommodate or take into account, to me, a very different philosophical approach of the Agile methodologies, this pull approach that I think it is recommending. So just off the top of my head, a couple of places in the PMBOK guide that I would recommend making changes would be these. In Chapter 2, they have a paragraph on different project life cycles. They do address the iterative project lifecycle approach, and I would recommend, of course, building that out, adding more into that section. Do mention the Agile approaches, doing sprints, their iterative approaches, how that would work. So I would recommend that. Also in Chapter 2, they discuss the classic types of stakeholders on projects. So I would recommend adding some of the terminology, some of the points of view that are mentioned and referenced in the Agile methodologies. In Chapter 4, Integration Management, where they discuss the 6 processes there, they discuss develop project management plan, and it's a very formal plan. It must be approved. It must have all these subsidiary plans. We should track and support the project management plan with all these other 38 project documents. So I would recommend adding some, add a paragraph, add some lines there that say that when we're doing things with Agile in much more of this iterative approach, we'll lighten up on some of the formality, we'll allow a lot more freedom, we'll basically entrust the team members doing the sprints to decide for themselves what level of detail we need to go to in the planning, what types of documentation would be included or not, and there'll be more freedom, less formality in that Agile type of approach. In Chapter 5, Scope Management, where they talk about the 3 planning processes: collect requirements, define scope, create WPS, and such. I would address Agile approaches, build out some of the tools and techniques they already have in these planning processes. But I also would, again, there's a more philosophical difference for Agile about how to break down the scope, how to hierarchically break down the scope, and they always keep this very customer-focused reference. So I would add some language, I would add some either tools and techniques, or add some descriptions in these planning processes to talk about the more customer-focused approach in Agile. In Chapter 7, Cost Management, where they're talking about earned value, I would definitely heartily recommend that they address earned value in Agile, that we can't do the traditional types of earned value techniques and measurements in Agile because we don't have a cost baseline, an S-curve that takes us out through the entire project. We don't have a BAC. So nonetheless, even though we can't use traditional earned value, there are some very other creative methods being explored and analyzed by people today, using burn down charts and burn up charts, and so some substitution of some different techniques. I would mention those. I think those are very worthwhile. Probably we can find ways to even apply some of those techniques in our traditional projects, so it'd be good to add some discussions there. In Chapter 9, Human Resource Management, especially in the processes, develop project team and manage project team, I would add information. I would build this out more and talk about the typical stakeholder roles, again, that are used in Agile, and the whole real different approach that's used in Agile for managing teams and developing teams and such. So those are just, again, my 2 cents. I know, again, based on what they're saying, they're probably Six Sigma, 99.999% sure they're not going to go into any kind of depth like that. And I know probably their comment back would be, oh no, you're trying to push us into defining very specific methodologies, and the PMBOK guide is all about this high-level framework, and we're not going to dig down into this level of detail, the nitty-gritty of specific approaches that apply in different projects. So I'm sure they're not going to include changes to this level of detail, but again, that would be my preference.